Hi and welcome. You are listening to Listen and Relax. Sit back and enjoy these horrible dating experiences that I will narrate for you. If you want us to continue making these videos, please let us know in the comments what you think about the stories and if we should continue. Please comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell to stay updated when we post new exciting stories. Some dates are just off. You know the kind. You think everything is going great, but then something happens that makes you realize the whole situation was a mistake from the start. This is the story of a date that took a turn I could never have expected. What started as a fun night out ended up exposing a side of a woman I never could have imagined. It all began like any other date. We'd been seeing each other for a few weeks, and I was honestly starting to like her. She was attractive, funny, easy to talk to. We had a lot in common. Things were going smoothly, and I was starting to think that maybe this could turn into something more. But on the fifth date, everything changed. We were having dinner, chatting about our lives, our families, and the usual stuff when she suddenly said almost offhandedly, "I should probably tell you, I have 2 kids." At first, I didn't think much of it. It's not unusual for people to have kids. I was just surprised that she hadn't mentioned it before, but I figured, okay, no big deal. Maybe she didn't want to bring it up too soon, and that's fine. But then she dropped a bombshell that I wasn't ready for. "I'm still married," she said, as casually as if she was ordering a drink. My mind immediately went blank. Married? Still married? What? How had I not known this? I started thinking about all the time we'd spent together, all the moments we'd shared. I realized that I had been lied to. This wasn't just a casual relationship. This was a woman who had been hiding a major part of her life. I was stunned. I tried to process what she had just said, but my mind was racing. "Wait a minute," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You're still married and you've been dating me this whole time?" She didn't seem to get why I was so thrown off. She just shrugged and said, "Yeah, but I can leave him for you." The words hit me like a slap in the face. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could someone so casually admit to breaking up their family for another person? How could someone be so selfish, so manipulative? My stomach turned, and I felt a wave of nausea wash over me. I couldn't help myself. I blurted out what I was really thinking. "You would probably do the same thing to me. If things got hard, you'd leave me just like you're leaving him." And that's when I realized just how wrong everything felt. This wasn't just a dating mishap. This was a person who had no regard for honesty, for loyalty, for the people she was supposed to care about. She wasn't just playing with my feelings. She was playing with the lives of everyone around her, including her husband and kids. Without thinking twice, I stood up from the table. I couldn't be a part of this. I couldn't be with someone who was so willing to throw away her entire life for a fling. "I can't do this," I said, my voice shaking with a mix of anger and disbelief. "This is wrong." And without another word, I walked out. She didn't stop me. She didn't try to explain herself or beg me to stay. She just watched me leave like it was no big deal. And that's when I knew I had just dodged a bullet. But even though I walked away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had narrowly escaped something much worse than just a bad date. To this day, I still think about that night. I still think about her words. "I can leave him for you." It wasn't just a confession. It was a glimpse into her true character. And I realized that if I'd allowed myself to get closer, I might have ended up just another victim in her tangled web of lies. Sometimes a date goes horribly wrong, and you know deep down you've only got yourself to blame. I learned this lesson the hard way. But looking back, I can't help but laugh at how badly I messed up. It all started with a date I had set up with a girl I was really looking forward to seeing. I had been chatting with her for a while, and we seemed to have a good connection. The plan was simple: meet at a local cafe, have some coffee, and see where the evening went. But what I didn't realize was that the night before our date, I had completely messed things up in a way I couldn't have predicted. The night before, I had a boxing match. It was a big one, and I was hyped. Of course, after the match, all I could think about was what had gone wrong, what had gone right, and what I needed to improve for next time. My coach had filmed the whole thing, so I spent hours after the fight reviewing every single move, analyzing my technique, and basically obsessing over all the details. So when the time came for my date, I was still completely in my own head, lost in the analysis of my performance. I showed up to the cafe, sat down, and immediately started talking about my boxing match. I began dissecting every round, going over my footwork, my punches, my defense. I was in full on coach mode, explaining my every move like I was giving a TED talk on the fine art of boxing. Now, here's the problem. The girl I was supposed to be on a date with didn't get much of a chance to speak. She got in maybe 2 sentences the entire time, and I didn't even realize it. I was so wrapped up in my own thoughts, my own excitement, and my own disappointment about the match that I didn't stop to ask her how her day went, what she liked, or anything that would have made her feel heard. I just kept rambling on about foot jabs and hooks like I was in a sports commentary booth. To make matters worse, I could tell she was getting more and more disinterested. She was polite, but the body language was clear. She wasn't into it. She kept checking her watch, shifting in her seat, and barely said a word. And then, when the date finally ended, I didn't even give it a second thought. I thought everything had gone fine, just a little awkward maybe, but I was too caught up in my own mind. That is, until the next day when she completely ghosted me. Not a text, not a call, nothing. It hit me all at once. I had made the date all about me, and I had completely ignored the one person who should have mattered. I had given her nothing but a monologue about my boxing match, and she didn't deserve that. Looking back, I can't say I blame her for ghosting me. I 100% deserved it. I had spent the whole time thinking about my thoughts, my plans, and my interests. And I didn't even give her the courtesy of being an actual date, of having a two-sided conversation. So here's the lesson I learned. If you've got a lot of stuff on your mind, something you really need to get off your chest, call your buddy, talk to your coach, or vent to your mirror. Don't bring it into a date. A date is about two people connecting, sharing, and listening, not just one person talking nonstop about themselves. Now, here's the twist. About 3 weeks after that train wreck of a date, I walked into the same cafe, and I met the love of my life. We started talking, and this time I actually listened. I made her feel heard, and we had a real connection. Fast forward almost 6 years, and we're still together. In fact, I'm planning a surprise luxury holiday for the two of us at the start of next year, and I think I might even propose to her while we're away. So, while that first date was a disaster, I guess it led me to something much better. It was fate. Sometimes the worst dates lead you to the best things. But trust me, if you've got a lot of baggage on your mind, leave it at the door before you go out on a date. Your future partner will thank you for it. I thought online dating was supposed to be a way to meet nice, normal people. You know, the kind of people who share your values and interests and maybe, just maybe, could become more than a first date. But sometimes online profiles can be deceiving, and so can people. Last year, I went on a date with a guy I met online. We'd been chatting for about a week, and honestly, I was excited. He seemed like he had everything going for him. A manager at a construction company, a house, a car, a dog, and an allotment. His profile said he was in his mid-30s, and to be honest, I thought we might actually hit it off. We arranged to meet at a pub halfway between us, and I was looking forward to seeing where it might go. Well, let me tell you, it was bad. So bad. First of all, he was easily in his mid-50s, if not older. He didn't look that bad, but his age was definitely a deal breaker. I'm not sure how someone can lie about their age on an online dating profile, but this guy definitely wasn't in his 30s. And I'm being generous by saying he might have been in his 40s at one point. So that was the first red flag, but I was determined to be polite and keep an open mind. Then the conversation took a turn that I honestly didn't see coming. I've dealt with anti-vaxxers before, and I always try to respect people's views, even if I don't agree with them. But this guy, he was on a whole other level. He told me that he didn't believe in any form of medicine, not even basic things like painkillers or antibiotics. He bragged about how proud he was that his mom, who had passed away from cancer, had refused all medical treatment. I was floored. He actually seemed proud that she hadn't sought any help when she was sick. And then the weirdness really kicked in. He told me that if he broke a bone, he wouldn't go to the hospital to have it set or treated. He would just let nature take its course. He was convinced that medicine was only preventing natural selection from doing its job, and that we were all living in a world populated by weaker people because of modern healthcare. It honestly sounded like I was sitting across from someone who had stepped out of a cult. And I was just getting started. Then there was the water thing. Apparently, tap water was poisonous to him. Instead of using any kind of water filter or getting a water delivery service like a normal person, he drove hundreds of miles every 2 weeks to fetch water from some pure well. It was a huge production, one that he was strangely proud of. He actually looked at me like I was insane when I mentioned that I used a Brita filter to clean my water. I wanted to ask, is this what I signed up for? But it got even worse. The date ended with him asking to see me again. And just when I thought it couldn't get more uncomfortable, he whipped out a schedule for our relationship. Yes, an actual schedule. Apparently, within the next 3 months, he would know whether he wanted me to move in with him, and then I'd be expected to sell my house. Then, after I moved in, we'd know if we should get married again in the next few months. He was that sure. He said I was 28, and that it was crucial for me to get married soon because, apparently, after 30, my chances of having babies would be dramatically reduced. And just to top off his wisdom, he said we need to have a short engagement because, women should only have babies when they're married. He even told me that if I survived childbirth, we'd definitely have more kids. I was absolutely stunned. This wasn't just a bad date, it was an absolute nightmare. I could feel my blood pressure rising as he went on and on about his timeline for our life, completely ignoring that I didn't even know this man, and we had only just met. I managed to hold it together long enough to tell him that I wasn't interested in seeing him again, mainly because our beliefs were too different. But he didn't seem to care. As I hurried to my car, I realized I needed to just get out. I blocked his number as soon as I started the Satin AV, and thankfully, I've never heard from him again. Since then, I haven't been on a date. Honestly, I've been happier that way. I'm happily single with my 2 dogs, and I don't think I'll be rushing back into the world of online dating anytime soon. Some things are just better left unexplored. Years ago, I made the mistake of agreeing to a date with a guy I met in a pub. We were in a group talking about films, and he casually asked if I'd like to see the new Star Wars movie with us. Now, at the time, I thought us meant a group of people from the pub. Turns out, us meant just him. Lesson learned. Always clarify the details before you agree to something. I show up at the cinema, excited for what I assumed would be a fun group outing, but of course he was late. He explained that his stupid dad had caused the delay by not leaving the house in time. Just to set the scene, this guy was in his mid-20s, so I'm not sure why he couldn't just, take himself to the cinema. When we finally got into the theater, things started to go downhill fast. He started eating popcorn in huge, obnoxious fistfuls, and not only was he chewing with his mouth open, he didn't even bother closing his mouth. The sounds of his chewing echoed throughout the theater like some kind of unsophisticated animal, and it made me regret agreeing to come in the first place. But it didn't stop there. Oh no. About 60% of the time during the film, he leaned over to whisper in my ear, very slowly, I might add, very fit you are, and he would do it again, and again, and again. It was neither funny nor charming. It was creepy and irritating. Honestly, by the third time, I just wanted to turn to him and say, yeah, I get it, I'm hot. Now can we just watch the movie in peace? I tried my best to ignore it, but things got worse. After the film, I was ready to just head home. But then, he asked for a lift. Apparently, he couldn't get hold of his dad, and he didn't have the money for a taxi. And because my dad always taught me to make sure people get home safely, I reluctantly agreed to drive him. Besides, we lived in the same village, which was about an 80-minute walk away for him. So I drove him to his house, hoping the night was finally over. But no. As I pulled up outside his parents' house, he turned to me and tried to kiss me. And not just a quick peck. Oh no. This was a full-on, slobbering, romantic smooch. He was leaning in, eyes closed, lips puckered, like I was some damsel waiting to be kissed. I dodged him, of course. I mean, who tries to kiss someone they just met on a date like that? Especially after that disaster of an evening? He looked like a slobbering mess, and I couldn't get away fast enough. You'd think that would be the end of it, right? Wrong. About a week later, he called and asked for a second date. I did my best to let him down gently, explaining that I didn't feel a connection. But instead of taking it gracefully, he completely lost his cool and slammed the phone down on me. It was a wake-up call. From that day forward, I've learned a valuable lesson. Never agree to a date without checking the details. And definitely never assume a date means a group outing unless you've double-checked. That was one date I'll never forget, and one I'm sure I'll never repeat. So I went on a Tinder date once. To be honest, I hadn't checked out his socials beforehand. Big mistake. Huge mistake, but lesson learned, right? We decided to meet at this lovely beachfront bar for a drink, a place with great views and a chill atmosphere. Sounds perfect, right? Yeah, not quite. As soon as he sat down, he opened his mouth and immediately made a remark that I will never forget. He casually said something like, "Yeah, it's a lovely place until the funny colored immigrants' boats wash up and ruin it." I honestly froze for a second. Like, did he really just say that? But I tried to stay calm, thinking maybe I misheard him or maybe he was joking. Nope. I responded, trying to keep things light, that I thought it was a bit harsh. I mean, who talks like that on a date? But then he doubled down. He said, "The best place for them is in the sea." I was shocked. My stomach turned. I tried to keep my composure, but I couldn't even finish my pint. I downed it as quickly as possible, stood up, and said something along the lines of, "Yeah, I think I'll just head off." I wasn't about to spend another second listening to that kind of talk. And that was it, no second date. I didn't think about it much until later when I decided to block him on Tinder, but curiosity got the better of me. And I checked out his social media links, which in hindsight should have been step one. And, well, there it was. His profile was 100% what you'd expect. A stereotypical Union Jack flag picture with posts about anti Muslim stuff, whining about they want to ban the poppy, and asking, remember when Britain was British? You know, all that vile, xenophobic nonsense that just makes your skin crawl. It was clear that he was one of those guys. I couldn't block him fast enough. It's crazy how sometimes you just get blindsided by these people. But lesson learned, always check out their socials before meeting up because that date was one of the fastest exits I've ever made. So I went on a date a few months ago, thinking it was going pretty well. We've been texting for a while, and the chemistry was definitely there. We met up, had some drinks, laughed, and even ended the night with some pretty intense making out. Like, this date was fire. I was feeling great about it. So when she asked if I wanted to meet up again, I was all in. The next week, she suggested a bar near her place, no problem. I'm down. But here's where it all goes sideways. I had to drive over an hour during rush hour to get there. So let's just say I wasn't exactly in a cheerful mood by the time I finally arrived. But hey, I thought we're building something here, right? That thought didn't last long. I sit down, grab a drink, and try to ease into it. And then, just like that, she hits me with it. "I think we should just be friends." Wait, what? She follows it up with the classic. "I just thought it'd be nicer to tell you in person." I swear, I almost choked on my drink. I'm not sure what hurt more, her saying it, or the fact that I had just driven an hour in rush hour traffic to hear it. Nicer? Are you kidding me? Nicer than sending a simple text? At this point, I was so caught off guard, I didn't even know how to respond. What do you say to someone who wastes your time and your gas money? So there I am, sitting across from her, trying to figure out how to get out of this situation with at least a little bit of dignity. Honestly, I didn't even know how to feel. I was annoyed, confused, and more than a little pissed off. I don't know what she thought would happen. Like maybe she was somehow doing me a favor. But all I could think was, why didn't you just text me that? Needless to say, the date ended pretty quickly after that. There was no second drink, no lingering goodbyes, just me staring at my empty glass, wondering how the heck I got myself into this mess. I got back in my car, drove home, and deleted every single dating app one had on my phone. Done. I wasn't sure if it was the date that drained me or just the whole experience, but I had no interest in putting myself through that again. A few months went by, and honestly, I didn't miss dating. The only time I went out with someone else was when I ran into a girl at a coffee shop in real life. An actual face to face conversation. Imagine that. It wasn't a date, just a nice chat, but hey, it was a breath of fresh air compared to the mess I just left behind. So, yeah, lesson learned. If you're gonna get rejected, do it over text and save everyone some time. Because driving an hour just to be told we should be friends is not my idea of a good time. I've been off dating apps since then, except for that one random coffee shop encounter. But honestly, I'm not in any rush. I'll meet someone when it's right, not when it's nicer to meet in person after hours of driving. So I went on this Tinder date with a teacher who worked near me. Nice enough, we met up for a drink at the pub. Things started out fine, but as soon as we sat down, she dove right into the deep end. She asked me about my mental health issues, and we ended up talking for an hour about them, plus the toxic circle of friends I had. She told me I needed to drop them, and I ended up actually doing that a few months later. But at the time, I wasn't prepared for such a heavy conversation. By the end of it, I was emotionally drained. I politely told her I wasn't having the best time and was going to leave, but she apologized and asked for a second chance. I was exhausted but figured, what the heck, maybe I was just tired. So we kept going. She stepped out for a smoke, and I grabbed some more drinks. She came back and was suddenly this witty, engaging, fun person to be around. It felt like a different person. She then asked if I'd go with her to a nightclub in a town near hers. My brain was telling me don't do it, but Tiny Elvis, the little voice that makes all the bad decisions, was in full force. So, off we went. At the nightclub, things started to get fuzzy. I was on my fifth drink, feeling a bit dizzy, and suddenly I wasn't feeling so great. I figured I was too far from home to get a taxi, so I asked if I could crash at hers. No expectations, I just needed some food and a bed. On the way there, she asked if I wanted to stop for food. I declined. I didn't have much cash left and still needed to get home in the morning. We arrived at hers, and she fixed herself some toast and coffee. Cool, but she didn't offer me anything to eat. I didn't ask. Back then, I was too polite to ask for food, so I just made do with water. She then casually mentioned she used to be on a popular swinger site and had been a professional dominatrix. I was cool with that. Kink is cool. We were on the same page. But honestly, by this point, I just wanted sleep. So we get into bed, and just when I thought I could finally rest, she starts gyrating her ass into me. My stomach was already doing somersaults. But Tiny Elvis wasn't backing down. We fool around for a bit, but when it came time for the main event, Tiny Elvis just couldn't perform. She got really angry about it and told me to just go to sleep. I was like, fine, whatever. That's literally all I wanted in the first place. Sleep. I woke up about half an hour later with a splitting headache, and my glass of water had mysteriously disappeared. I stumbled around the pitch black room, knocking everything over, and finally managed to get a drink from the bathroom sink. I did my best to get back into bed and finally relax, but then she got up, turned the light on, and asked if I wanted coffee. I asked why the hell I would want coffee when I just got into bed, and she snapped at me, saying it was 7:30 a.m. and I needed to get up. Apparently, she wasn't a lazy cunt like me. So I agreed to have coffee, and she told me to get dressed and come downstairs. She acted like I was her servant at this point. Downstairs, I smelled bacon and coffee. But when I asked for food, she didn't offer me anything. Just coffee. I told her I was going to leave soon. She asked how I was getting home, and I told her I'd walk to the next village and chill out at a cafe until the buses started running. It was a Sunday morning, and I didn't want to take a taxi. She insisted on driving me, though, and we started the journey. She passed right through the village I wanted to stop at, ignore my request to let me out, saying she was taking me all the way home. I was getting a bit uneasy at this point, but I kept quiet. We were listening to some Stone Sour, and I jokingly sang along, making a comment about how I sounded just like Corey Taylor. She immediately snapped and yelled at me, saying I sounded nothing like him and that I was delusional. The rest of the journey was in total silence. When we finally reached my neighborhood, I asked her to pull over at the shop parking lot. She didn't say anything, but her body language screamed that she was pissed off. I thanked her for the lift and tried to leave quickly. Later that day, I woke up from a nap to a barrage of angry messages. She was accusing me of having bad breath, being cocky, and hiding things about my personal life. She claimed I didn't want to let her know where I lived, and even made up a story about me throwing up all over her house and making her clean it up. I replied, politely pointing out that she didn't offer me any food, and maybe if I had eaten, my breath wouldn't have smelled so bad. I told her I didn't want to sleep with her in the morning, and if she asked me to stop the car, I was just going to be a normal person and not make a scene. I even mentioned that I suspected my drink might have been spiked because I went from perfectly fine to feeling sick in a matter of minutes. Her response? She accused me of being abusive and threatened to tell our mutual friend that I'd made a scene at her place. Fortunately, that mutual friend was one of my closest friends for over 20 years and knew exactly who was full of shit. Needless to say, there was no second date, and I learned a huge lesson. Never trust your gut when Tiny Elvis is involved. The night went from bad to worse, and I'm just happy to have gotten out unscathed. A friend of mine spent literally 2 years bugging me to join a dating site. I wasn't exactly feeling confident about it, and honestly, it felt like a total waste of time and money, for the most part. But eventually, I decided to give it a shot and signed up. The results were not great. Lots of boring conversations, too many weird profiles, and not much luck at all. I was about ready to delete my account when, out of the blue, I got a message from a girl. She seemed okay, so we chatted for a bit, had some laughs, and eventually agreed to meet up for a date. Things were looking up, or so I thought. When I showed up to the date, she wasn't alone. Not only was she there, but her mum was with her. She explained that her mum was just dropping her off because she didn't drive, and it wasn't an issue for her mum to do that. So it didn't seem like a big deal at first. Cool, no biggie, right? But then, within the first 5 minutes, things took a seriously awkward turn. Her mum, and she started discussing, right in front of me, when I would be moving in with them. Moving in with them? I just met this girl, and now her mum was already planning my future with them. I'm standing there, feeling like I've fallen straight into an episode of The Twilight Zone. I was just trying to enjoy a drink and make a polite exit as quickly as possible. But every time I tried to steer the conversation in another direction, they'd circle right back to, "So, when are you moving in with us? We have the spare room ready." The whole situation was so strange, I could hardly keep up. I finally made my escape, but the drama didn't end there. I didn't block her right away, which was a rookie mistake on my part. The next thing I know, she was asking me for a second date. I had already told her about my mental health struggles, depression, anxiety, PTSD from a near fatal accident a few years ago, but I wasn't in the right headspace to go on another date. So I gave her a pretty vague excuse about needing to get my head together and not feeling ready to date. What followed made hitting block button seem so much easier. She fired off a long message about how I just needed to think happier thoughts and how anxiety isn't real, followed by a rant that basically invalidated everything I had shared with her about my mental health. She actually said that if I just thought more positively, I wouldn't be depressed. I was done. I blocked her so fast that I was practically leaving skid marks on my phone screen. Seriously, it was like a relief and a wake-up call all at once. If only I'd known that the Meet Your Dates Mom combo would lead to that kind of chaos, I might have stayed home and binge-watched Netflix instead. So yeah, online dating has its highs and lows, but that date was a definite low. At least I learned a valuable lesson. Always check if it's a solo date before agreeing to meet up, and make sure you've got that block button ready, just in case. So I went on a date with this guy who seemed okay at first, but quickly turned out to be not. He started off by showing me pictures of his ex-girlfriend, and not just any pictures, pole dancing photos. Apparently, this was his way of introducing me to his open-mindedness or whatever, but to be honest, it just felt weird and inappropriate. But the fun didn't stop there. Oh no. He then proceeded to tell me that he only ever cooked 2 meals: pasta with butter and couscous with butter. That's it. No seasoning, no variety, just butter. I mean, I get it. Who doesn't love a simple meal every now and then? But seriously? 2 meals for a grown adult? Oh, and the dishwashing situation. He did it once a week because, according to him, dishes don't need washing after each use. Yeah, you heard that right. Each use. I mean, I don't know what kind of minimalist lifestyle he was living, but I prefer my plates to be at least somewhat clean. Then came the date from hell, which just happened to be the same day England went into COVID lockdown. It wasn't an official curfew yet, but the tension was palpable, and we decided to go ahead with our plans. The date itself was okay, I guess. He was a little handsy, but I was in one of those who knows what's going to happen next moods, so I let it slide. But after the date, things got weird real fast. He asked if he could come back to mine and isolate with me. I was like, hold up, dude. I don't know you, we're in the middle of a pandemic and I'm still working. The last thing I wanted was to spend lockdown drinking beer and binge watching Netflix with someone I just met. So I said no, kindly but firmly. He didn't take that too well. Not at all. He got furious and accused me of being a prick tease because I had kissed him. I mean, what did he expect? A lifelong commitment after one date? All I said was I was on the apps to find a relationship, not to immediately jump into some kind of lockdown romance with a stranger. It was honestly baffling, but that's not the worst of it. My friend had her own dating disaster not long after. She went out for dinner and drinks with this guy, and by the time they were done, she was feeling pretty off, sick and dizzy. She wasn't drunk though, so she thought maybe it was something with the food. He took her back to his place to rest, and the next thing she remembers is waking up in his bed. She has no recollection of what happened after that, just that she woke up feeling disoriented and uncomfortable. She never went to the police. She said she'd rather not know. but it seriously shook her up. That's something I'll never forget. I mean, how does this happen? It's a reminder to trust your instincts always and be super cautious when meeting strangers from apps. Not every date is just mad. Sometimes they're a real red flag. So, yeah, I've had some rough experiences with dating apps, and I don't think I'll be rushing back anytime soon. And honestly, I'm not sure I'll ever be able to look at a plate of buttered pasta the same way again.